Well, good day. Actually, I'll start again because I think there's a bit of a delay with the live feed. So I will say, I think yeah. I can't really tell, but you'll be able to tell me. I'm very sure that someone will let me know. All right, so I will start here at marker 320. 320 sounds like a very, very interesting number. Maybe we'll get into that. Some of you know how much I love math and mathematics and everything related to science as well, which is core to today's discussion. We are discussing vaccine research today. Okay. Turn the jazz down just a bit. Okay, so before we begin, I know that in this new form, I've been trying to work out the kinks and figure out which was the best way to share information, dispel myths, and let you know more about me. And in doing so, what I keep finding is that along this process, I still have to introduce myself to those who do not know me. I thank you very much for those of you who have supported me from the beginning. And I thank those who have found out about me one way or the other and now are supporting me. I appreciate that. And I mean supporting me at political elections or in political elections, voting for me. I am very, very appreciative and I do not take any of it lightly. Or supporting me by sharing my videos and sharing, spreading the word that I do exist, that I'm not just part of the rumor mill. There's some, black girl scientist at the doctoral level that says she wants to run for president one day and wants to run for mayor against these powerhouse, and in my opinion, most of them are corrupt mayor or commissioner. So yes, I do exist. My name is Tigress Sydney Acute McDaniel. I have two middle names, Sydney Acute. I'm from Greensboro, North Carolina. You can visit www.ctigressrun.com. Of course, you can see how to spell my name because you're here. You fell upon or you have deliberately come over to watch my live today. And so you can find the spelling of my first name on this page. And of course, in this video, the description and very likely in the comments, because I have, it's been brought to my attention that evidently there still may be a bit of obfuscation as to who I am and what I stand for. And I tell you all the time, this is something that my mother used to tell me when I was growing up. She'd always tell me that not everybody who looks like you is for you. And so this was a catch-all. It was not only just for my race, and I am Black. I identify as Black. I was born in America. My dad is, as I understand it, he is third generation Haitian. So you will hear me rep Haiti as well as part of my culture, my ethnic background. My mom, her side of the family, my maternal side, is also of Native American descent. Cherokee is what I understand. And this is not uncommon. This is not an uncommon story for diasporan Black Americans. I am very much so Black. I am Black first. And as much as I would want to say human first, and you've heard me say this over and over again, because I believe, and I was raised to believe, that all people are my people. However, remember that the same person who raised me to believe that all people are my people also reminded me that everybody that looks like me is not for me. So if you hear these things without, I guess maybe frustration, or if you hear them correctly, and do not superimpose maybe some ideologies that you're hearing out and about, some of them are more prevalent right now, then you'll hear the simplicity and the beauty of the wisdom in those things that my mother so very eloquently taught me. It doesn't negate the fact that I am Black first. My father was a member of the Black Panther Party, and the Black Party. My dad would have started a Black Party if he could. He may have even considered it and then decided to just, plunge, to just go full speed ahead with the Black Panther Party. But what I'm getting at is that I'm not, this is a word I'm looking for, because I really must tell you that this is something that I am actually not very content with having to remind people. I want you all, if we will work out much, much better, we will be able to have a much, much more productive relationship if you stop asking me to introduce myself. But I understand where this may be relevant when we're, sharing information about me to get more people on board. Also, one thing that I've learned from my family, and it has become my own saying, is that standards only offend those who have none. I'm going to say it one more time. Standards only offend those who have none. Okay? So again, if this is piercing to your spirit, then you may perceive my words as I'm saying that I'm better than anyone, or I'm better than everyone, anyone, like specifically one class of people, one group of people, whatever. You are not correct. So these three sayings, amongst other very, very wise teachings that I have received from my beautiful, absolutely amazing Black elders in my life, lets you know that I am reasonable, objective, but I do not take bullshit. There's no need to water it down. There will be instances, and I want there to be more instances, where I can just speak to you using my own natural voice. This is my natural voice. This is my natural self. Because I am 43 years old. And a lot of you all speak to the fact that you believe very strongly that an adult, someone between 25 and up, should be able to articulate themselves without profanity. But I also find that too often in the Black community, we have certain populations of us who don't want to listen to reason and want to continue to divide us on petty issues. I am beyond above petty. It doesn't mean that I am better than anyone, because some of you also know that I jokingly call myself bougie hood. All of these things I use to give those who are not thinking in a discriminatory fashion. If you are just listening to the straight words that I'm using, and you're not reading into some type of backstory that doesn't exist, because I don't use backstories. I don't imply, I say, I declare. That's another thing that I learned from my father, is that an adult should be able to state a declarative sentence without shrinking therefrom. So when you hear all these things and you hear that I was a military brat, my mom and dad divorced after 10 years, around the time that I was 7, 8, they got back together. I thought it was going to be a beautiful reunion, and then they decided to move on. Now you may wonder, what does all of this have to do with vaccine research, Tigress? Because again, as I've stated, I have to continue to reintroduce myself. This is going to become a shorter conversation. I'm going to start the video off. I'm going to let you know that I am Tigress Sydney Acute McDaniel. I have a BS degree in agricultural education with a specialization in environmental science. I have a master's, and that's a master's of science in agricultural economics and rural development, also with a specialization in wetland bioremediation and environmental science. And I have a PhD ABD. And I'm using that colloquially when I say I have, because I do not yet possess my doctorate degree. However, the PhD ABD is an indication, it's just an acronym. Of course, we know, right? Doctor of Philosophy, right? And then otherwise, we know the ABD is for all but dissertation. So that signifies, for those who are aware of the academic process of pursuing your doctoral degree, that you have been qualified, or you've been qualified as an expert in your respective specialization. For me, it is economics and environmental science. And I use environmental science loosely because that is not what's on my degree specifically. Scientists will all tell you that even where you may have a specialization, because the sciences are interdisciplinary and often needed to properly research and contribute to the knowledge and discovery in any particular field or subfield of the applied physical sciences, it can be difficult to say just specifically what type of scientist you are. So most specifically, I would be a wetland scientist. As it relates to this type of science, if you're familiar with a wetland, the wetland has water, right? We generally know that the wetland is called wet because it has a water element, okay? You know that it also has soil. You know that it has plants. And some of you who have a little more knowledge than maybe your average person who's not really that, into wetlands, is maybe disinterested in wetlands. Or more often, you know it, but you hadn't considered it because it is not your field of expertise or your field or your scope of knowledge. But in the water, in any body of water, we generally can comprehend that there is life in that water. So then it also includes microbial life, microbiology. And particularly, you also have fungus and bacteria. Okay. So why would this woman be commenting on vaccine research? And I'm asking a rhetorical question, then ironically enough, I'm going to answer it for you. You know what I mean? I don't like the colloquialism devil's advocate, because I don't want to be associated with anything that's trying to be antagonistic or evil or touting or condescending. So I just don't like that. but I'm asking a question, then I'm going to answer the questions, if you will. And you are most welcome to ask your questions live. I will be answering questions in real time. And if by chance you see this video after the fact and you still yet have a question, you can pose your question in the comments. I can answer it in the comments, or I will allow you to choose. And of course, contingent on the available time during these hour-long sessions, if I can get around to your question in that next consecutive live feed, then I will answer your question live if you request. I will very willingly do so. I'm only going to spend 20 minutes of this hour on this kind of sector of it all. And then we're going to move forward to vaccine research. Okay. We're going to talk about why it's so hard, why we don't have kind of like a catch-all vaccine, and why, if not a catch-all, why don't we have an apt defense, quote unquote, on the ready for the variations that we're seeing, not the mutations, because viruses, we know they mutate on a regular basis, right? But different strains. So nonetheless, the point that I'm making here is that when I make these statements to you and I say that all people are my people, everybody who looks like you isn't for you, standards only offend those who have none, I tell you I'm a military brat, I tell you I'm a scientist, I tell you I'm a former federal ranger, I tell you that I have attended by choice after attending UNC Chapel Hill. So I have received admission to PWIs, which are predominantly white institutions. And I have elected on my own accord, after discovering, because I wanted to challenge myself, and I wanted to know firsthand, having gone to a predominantly Black middle school and high school, that my education and my training for this secondary education was consistent with, on par with, or below, or otherwise above. I was able to very quickly ascertain that not only was my training consistent and on par, it had launched me into a realm of academic excellence, which was not common with what I saw on PWIs. Now, this may be the case because I am Black on that campus, and maybe there was less of a commitment to Black women or Black people on those campuses. I didn't delve into it to finalize my research. Of course, I just went on my own observations. This was no type of formal research that I conducted, okay? And I returned to North Carolina A&T State University. And when I say I returned, because A&T was already home for me as a Dudley Panther alum, which is Dudley High School, of course. Some of you are aware of this. Okay. So I've never been confused. You know how you meet those individuals who are sometimes confused about their Blackness at some point in their life. And it's, for some, and I know some of you will say, no, that's not understandable. For some, it is understandable, because you have to consider the things that they've been through. Maybe they were teased because they were very, very fair-skinned, and teased by a lot of who they deemed their fellow, Black women, and they just didn't understand why they were being treated this way. Maybe it was vice versa, that their light-skinned friends, quote unquote, were very demeaning to their rich-skinned friends. So every one of us Black Americans has gone through our own individual life processes, experiences, catastrophes, and other just general life events that impact the way that we perceive ourselves as Black in America, as Black in the world, and as Black in Black America, within our own population, okay? And we're at 23 minutes. So the point that I'm making here is I need you to understand that I have never had a reason to question my Blackness. My mother is beautifully rich skinned. My father is beautifully toned just like me. Red, there's a little more red in his skin tone. And I have had a very healthy dose of confidence and humility, and I don't ever question my loyalty. I don't question it. Sometimes people self-reflect and they question it. I don't question it. I get upset that sometimes those within my Black community do not rock with me and protect me and stand up for me the way that I do endlessly, without fail, without hesitation, to my fellow Black Americans. But it doesn't mean that I am going to give up. Okay? When I say that we have standards and that those who are offended by standards generally have none, it's a truism. If I tell you that I would like for us to be able to do certain things a certain way, follow certain standards, I mean that. But it doesn't mean that I'm not ride and live, as opposed to the hashtag ride or die. I'm all the way down. I want us to live and live greatly, live abundantly, be empowered. I don't want us to be enslaved by different precepts and myths that we have subscribed to and taught newer generations to adopt them as well. I'm so glad that some of these new, brilliant, young Black minds are getting the information from those of us who have become enlightened and not afraid to teach our children that some of this stuff was just a myth. You don't have to blindly follow things that were part of an institution of white supremacy and used against Black America to keep them mentally enslaved. And I say them because my mom wasn't mentally enslaved. My dad wasn't. So it didn't ever apply to my what do they call it? My nuclear or my nucleus, if you will, nuclear family. My nucleus, it never applied. I was the only child. My son is an only child, from his maternal side anyway. And yeah, he knows all about his Blackness. All right. So if anyone comes to you and they suggest that somehow I'm confused about my Blackness, or that somehow I am pro-police as opposed to pro-ending police brutality, I mean, I'm here, I'm live. All you gotta do is just pull one of my videos and you'll see. And I'm saying this because I do get information. People do keep me informed, especially those who support and rock with me hard. They'll send me little tidbits. They send me information from the protests. So please understand that when you think you're obfuscating about the loyalty and the worth of a Tigress Sydney Acute McDaniel, trust and believe is getting back to me. Because those who are truly enlightened in Black America, they know to watch out for those of us who would assume the same role as Harriet Tubman's slave master's bounty hunter. Some of you remember that and I'm talking about the movie depiction, because we don't know of this particular character in reality and history. To my knowledge, I've not heard of anything. Maybe there have been new findings. So if he really existed, because we can perceive this, we can comprehend that this person very possibly could have existed. And then maybe they didn't. And that would be even better. Even better if he didn't exist. But from the depiction, there are some of us who would assume that type of role against our own people, against our own beautiful Black people. And they would stir up confusion. They would tell lies about the people who are the good guys, the people that you need to rock hard with. Oh, trust, I'm Harriet all day long. I was Harriet. I've been Angela Davis. I have been me my entire life. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm just going to run out into the street and say, oh, I'm going to curse all white people and I'm going to advocate for killing all white people, because I'm also a scientist and I'm also human. That is not our quality to just say, oh, we just want nothing to do with any other race. That's just, it's no better than white supremacy, really. But being Black first, that's not a racist stance. That's a protective empowerment stance, especially considering all the disinformation we've received, the treatment we've received over the years, discrimination, we've been torn apart. Destructive tactics have come from outsiders and within, and again, from those who would assume the same position as Harriet's slave master's bounty hunter, right? So you don't have to question me. Go and read my tweets, okay? And if you see any, and I'm gonna get on to the vaccine research, I promise, because I had to make sure to take care of this. And in fact, what I'll do is I'll have another live feed for the vaccine research. But we're at 30 minutes, so I'm not going to deny you the vaccine information that I have for you today. But I'll make sure that the next live feed will be full hour of, like I said, I'm going to have that 5 minutes that I'm going to say, this is me. And then I'm going to jump right into vaccine research, okay? So, but don't question my Blackness. It's offensive. I don't take it lightly. Don't question my commitment to the Black community. Don't do that. I take it very seriously. My only political campaign accounts, social media accounts, are exclusive to @CTigressRun. Here on Facebook, it's /CTigressRun. I copped that a long time ago. It's been mine. There you have it. And for some of you who would say, oh, she's talking about I copped that. You know, some of you would obfuscate until the cows come home, right? I'm using the same colloquialisms or slang that we all would use coming up. Copped it, I meant that I got it. Not copped it like there's some new slang reference to cops. As a former federal ranger, yes, I worked alongside Border Patrol, and yes, I was the only Black woman at both of the parks where I was employed. And at each of those parks, I rocked my fro. So trust and believe there has not ever been a question as to who I am. And they knew exactly who they were hiring. And when I got there, I was exactly the same individual while I was there. Okay? When I talk to you about these experiences, it's me explaining to you that not everybody who looks like a white supremacist or Caucasian is against Black Americans. And that'll be another conversation to have. But that does not ever negate my priorities. All right, so I hope that we will be able to not have to have this conversation. too many other times. All right, I don't want to hear anything in the streets because they tell me, the streets tell me everything I need to know. You hear me? Okay, all right, because they know me. Yeah, okay. All right, so basically here we are. All right, so let's let's answer the number one question that we all have. Why is there no vaccine for COVID-19? So it's a twofold answer. This answer, some of you may not appreciate because you're going to deem it to sound like a pacification or the answer that is given by scientists, expert scientists, if you will, just for, publicity's sake, if you will. But it's the truth. You see, vaccines and disease research can be very complicated. Now, my son is saying hello, and then, okay, you're done with school, right? All right, let me go ahead and finish. This is serious. Okay. All right, so, and he would do that. Some of you who are like, oh my God, that's rude. That's not rude, because sometimes we go live on our social media accounts that are very lighthearted. So don't judge my son. All right. And so with the vaccine research, why is it so difficult, and why don't we have a vaccine for COVID-19? With different strains, there is different behavior for the virus. And it must be studied, because just using a previous vaccine to treat a new strain is inevitably insufficient. You don't treat a new problem with old plans. The old plans may still apply generally, but may not resolve all the current issues to the new problem. Here's a great example. I'll give you a example that like in construction, and then I'll give an example with science and this type of science, human and health sciences, if you will, the human and health related sciences. Okay, so if you have ever received a permit, if you've ever owned a business or went in business with someone and you wanted a restaurant, we'll say, okay? Aforetime, a decade ago, there would have been certain stipulations for the dimensions of a bathroom and the accommodations for your customers. Even 20 years ago, we know that there were scant accommodations for what? Those who needed wheelchair access. So back in the day, your blueprint or your plans, your construction plans would have been permitted. You would have received an approved permit. It would have worked just fine. You don't use that same blueprint where there have been changes to legislation to make certain accommodations, dimensions and otherwise, to the scale of your bathroom, because it would only generally apply and it wouldn't specifically apply and resolve all of the problems that have been met directly with the new legislation. Understand? The new laws. We got that. Okay? So where there is a strain of a virus, generally, we all know, because we generally at this point in in most adult lives, I would say anyone who is 16 and over, even, the teenagers who are, just knocking on adulthood's door, right? We generally know at a certain point that an antibody is what we need, right? Okay, well, what's the big deal? We need an antibody. The antibody is just like the blueprint. Okay? And so we have this vaccine, and in it, like you've heard people say, it's kind of like you got the antibody and it has information in there and it says, hey, look for this. Get this. Just like if you were to, using your dogs for hunting, right? You have them sniff what it is that you are hunting, right? So they become familiar with the smell, and then they seek out what you're hunting. No different in concept to the vaccine and the antibody. However, if there's a new strain, there may be a different behavior. I was going to say motility, but motility applies, and so basically motility is the motion of a bacteria or microbial life. You see, vaccine, and you've heard me kind of playfully say this before, the vaccine has no wings. It has no flagellum, and when I say wings, again, I'm being especially playful because generally your bacterium don't have wings. Your microbial life generally, don't have that type of motility. There's some similarities, but it's not the same, especially the way, they can spin and move and have a little more speed, if you will, and have a semblance that looks like what we are familiar with when we say wings and wing movement and flight, right? Okay, so motility is directly related to anatomy of microbial life that helps them move, right? Okay, so like I said, the flagellum, this wiggly tail, if you will, right? And they wiggle it around, it moves them through, right? So you can think of that, okay? Viruses don't so much as have motility. They need to hitch a ride onto something, and normally that is a saliva droplet, right? And then they can, travel in through, some type of, expulsion, right? So you sneeze, you cough, you pick it up, but they need to hitch a ride. They're not moving flagellum about and making their way to us in a more autonomous, because it's not so much as and it's intuitive. It's not so much as deliberate. It's not cognitive. We know that there are animals that have brains, but they don't have the same cognitive capacity as we do as humans, okay? So that answers that question. Now let me just give it to you like this, okay? And I'm going to say it just as straight as I can possibly say it, and I'm going to say it just as colloquially as I can say it, because I want you to have a full understanding and get into the minds of scientists. Especially if you're one of those individuals who just feels very strongly that you just feel like scientists are always speaking Greek and just always making things, just unnecessarily difficult. We're not. Our biggest concern is that we're working, and here we go. I'm starting with the colloquial other way to answer it. Here's the alternative answer. Humans, we generally value. So research on humans, where humans would be our test subjects, is very closely scrutinized. Now we're not going to get into race, because that's a whole nother category, and so just understand that yes, absolutely. Let me do a real caveat right here, so there's no one that uses this information and tries to obfuscate what I'm saying. We know that Black Americans have been taken advantage of historically for research development, and that is wrong, 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 evil, 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 wrong, 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 wrong. I don't condone any of it. I think I was pretty straight. Okay. All right. So for the general process of human research, the general process, the ethical standard, how it's supposed to be, and how it generally is that we want to make sure to hold and uphold great valuation for our human, quote unquote, participants or subjects. And so when we are testing, there are international research boards and there are policy in place to ensure that doctors and research scientists who are working together, because that's also a myth. There are doctors who take additional coursework and training beyond their specialization and their medicinal doctor programs. So there's a specific group of doctors. Not all doctors have engaged at that research. Not all doctors have participated in contributing to that research, although implicit and explicit to the process of being a doctor, whether they're an internist or they have a specialization, gastroenterology or cardiology, whatever, their findings can be used by scientists, research scientists, in their respective specializations to explain human disorders, human disease, phenomenon with the use of certain medications, okay? So we don't want to hurt nobody. So we can't just give you, and we want you to do well. We want you to live. We want you to thrive. Most scientists, and you've heard me say this as well, and there is a difference, and you've heard the difference in the way generally. Now, this is only a generalization because there are, of course, and let me say the statement first, and then you'll understand what I mean by the generalization. Through my process of becoming a doctoral level scientist and having had positions, professional paid positions, with both the federal government as a scientist, with private companies as a scientist, and agencies or entities that may be governed, like their work is governed by law, but they may not necessarily be a direct federal or state agency. I'm referring to, like, for instance, Savannah River nuclear power plant. I believe it was a separate entity. And of course, there's a public good element to it. And public good, when I say good, I don't mean good like the opposite of bad. I mean in the term of economics, goods and services. So the public good was to remediate or I'm using colloquially, or rid of waste, or transform that waste, that nuclear bad, unhealthy waste, into stabilized and inactive and involatile compounds. Okay, so I've done that, and I was a lead scientist in every position. I have held now, 8 positions since 1999. I graduated with my first degree in 98, and I'm not counting any of my internships. If I count my internships, then the number goes higher, okay? All right. So I am qualified to speak on this matter. Whereas I have told you before, as it specifically relates to virology, I am not a virologist. However, microbiology, I do have a specialization in microbiology because it's innate to the wetland, okay? And there are similarities to the understanding of both fields of study. All right. So what I'm getting at is I can also say that over this course of time, based on my professional observations, I have seen that generally chemists are less ethically driven than scientists from other applied physical sciences. I say this because there is a notion with chemistry that is almost like the God gene. You know, well, I can't say the God gene because that has two different implications, so I don't want to make it confusing here. So, because that's slang. God gene is slang. God-like. Similar to what we have noticed by some unethical doctors, right? They feel like they can do more than what they feel God can do, or they are on par with God because they can save lives, they can transplant organs and extend lives, and some of them feel like they give life. Okay, all right. So for scientists like myself, who are generally not chemists, normally those who are working on vaccine research, they are not trying to develop a chemical compound that will correct the activation of a virus. Instead, you're looking at microbiologists, you're looking at biologists, you're looking at virologists, you're looking at geneticists. Those are usually individuals who are conducting this type of research. And those individuals are looking for microscopic elements that are still biological in concept and in scope to help us strengthen our immune system. And the immune system is connected to this antibody, if you will. They're working to discover ways that we can enlarge the capacity of our own immune system to recognize these foreign enemies, if you will, these viruses, and recognize even their different strains. The mutations are less significant than the different strains. And then in such a way that it can be sustainable for years and years to come, because we all know as scientists that virus outbreaks, viral pandemics, viruses are a part of our everyday life, 24/7. Thank goodness, and you've heard me say this in other videos, I'm just in this particular video, and what I'm starting to do now is I'm going to I'm going to talk about one particular subject matter in each live video going forward. Whereas during the shutdown, if you'll recall, I chose kind of 3 high-level subjects or topics that I perceived based on the news, based on Facebook, conversation amongst people, conversation out in the community, and in politics. I chose those kind of 3 high-level topics to discuss, trying to give you more for your time, if you will. I'm very big on that. I don't want to waste your time because I don't want you to waste my time. I can't get my time back, neither can you. When you sit and watch this video, your time is gone. You can't get that back. We know how time works. We all understand that. And I want to be a value to you. I do. I don't want to be just another voice, another so-called academic who thinks they're smart enough to solve all our problems, just sitting in front of you, just giving you verbal diarrhea. I don't want to be that person. I'm not that person. So I'm not going to be that person. See how that worked out? It works out for us all. Okay, so we got about 7 minutes. I'm going to go over 3 minutes because remember, it was something real awkward. It was me being awkward, I think, trying to understand again, even though I do this because I was going to go live on YouTube, just to fill you in real quick. I was going to go live on YouTube because I told you I was going to transition all of my live to YouTube, and that was my intent. However, and I thought that I already knew what to do because I had already checked it out, but I hadn't pressed the button. I hadn't gone through that. I had just read through some things. Well, I had not ever, because I don't like using the word never, I had not ever activated live broadcast on my YouTube channel. So evidently, when you hit the button to go live, then it lets you know, oh, sorry, hey, you need to activate it. And now you've activated it. And in 24 hours therefrom, then you can go live with no further steps. So next week's live, or at this point, it will be another live this week, okay? So that I can get back on schedule. I will go live maybe tomorrow night, and I will tell you and explain to you what has happened to me over the weekend. I had to deal with a Karen. And it escalated to the extent that I have had to prepare to file for a temporary restraining order, 50C, for their harassing conduct. And they tried to, I don't know what their intent was with my son, but it's been curbed. That's a wrap. Done and done. Done. Okay. All right. So, but I'll go live and talk about that. But yeah, so I will go live 2 more times this week. One, to have that conversation with you all. And hopefully we will reach some individuals who still have this white privilege that they're hiding behind. See, the white supremacists, you've heard other beautiful black people say this as well. So don't take this to mean that I'm like, but she's saying she's rocking with white supremacists. Does she understand shit? No, come on, friends. It's kind of like again, colloquialisms that I'm using similar to like what Cat Williams would say, or maybe Stephen A. Smith, okay? At least I can appreciate the fact that the white supremacist is dead on. He in your face. He gonna show his true colors off the bat. He's not gonna pretend. He's not gonna slither in the grass. Pretend he's not gonna show up in sheep's clothing. He is there, boom, in your face. I can appreciate that. And I still have no respect. Clearly, I have no respect for them at all. None. Wrong. Okay, that's well established. Okay. Please stop taking people's words out of context. But I have a problem, serious issue, because those of you who know me well, you know that I despise lies. And then unnecessary lies. You just tell them to lie because it's Tuesday. I'm confused. But you're a whole adult, and that's how I feel about those Karens and the I don't know, do we have a name for those who are men that do it? The men who do it, who are Caucasian and have decided that they're going to assume this role, this feigned role that they like all of us. And then they just blow up, like just whenever, and they show their true colors. Show yourself on a regular basis. If you're so big, bad, and this is who you are, then, we don't want that either. But the point I'm making is, come on, because this is silly to me. This is very, very silly. So nonetheless, okay, we've discussed that. You know that Dr. Fauci has already commented on Dr. Lord, we know he ain't no darn doctor. On Donald Trump's recent positive test, right? And I concur. All scientists concur generally. There will be a reversal. He isn't well. Do you know how easy it is for a person to, and I don't even think this is I think some of us are mistaking even this appearance of well as a valid show of, oh, wow, he quickly recovered from COVID. Guys, come on. We're not that gullible. We've seen movies. I don't want to use, one example came to mind. I don't want to use that because I don't want to come across offensive. So I'm going to come up with another one. And I like to be honest because some of you, especially those of you who know me, you'll see it in my eyes. So I don't want you to mistake that. That's why I call it what it is when I do it, so that as you're getting to learn who I am and my mannerisms and see and interact with me, then you're like, oh, I get it. It wasn't that she was shifting her eyes because she was lying or trying to figure out a way to lie. No. Okay. But I'm not going to use that example, and I'm not going to share what that example is because I don't want to be, I have a great respect for this person. Okay. So some of you know that I'm also trained in the performing arts. I was a professional model, went to John Casablanca when I was 12, was in lots of pageants, was Miss Black Teen, Greensboro, runner-up, all kinds of stuff, okay? All right, so when you're preparing, right, for any performance, right? How many times, some of you you've been in band, you've played sports, and you've not even been on TV. So never mind even TV. We know that when it's time to perform, we pull it together, right? What happens when that performance is over? Are you somehow miraculously no longer have a cold? Do you somehow miraculously no longer feel terrible? No. It's what we've learned to do. We've been told, like our coaches, walk it off, right? We've all learned to, put on a brave face, right? So this is not uncommon. We know that he's going to put on a facade because this is part of his claim to fame. This is the reason he believes he has the following that he has. And his followers believe that he is thebomb.com because of his facade. His facade is effective for that group of people, right? So of course, don't be dissuaded, don't be discouraged when you maybe hear some of your racist friends on your job or on Zoom. I don't know if they're allowing racist comments on the Zoom feed. Lord have mercy, I don't think I could be their boss because I'd be, okay, all right, okay, Karen, boop. I leave group, boop. Okay, everyone, let's continue with our meeting. I'm not really sure how that's working out, but I'm just trying to give examples. Or for those of you, a lot of our still essential workers, you're working physically in the workplace. So it's a little harder to grab hold. And I mean figuratively, to identify those individuals and then, get them terminated and out of your workplaces, right? But we know that they're going to try to agitate you. They're going to try to antagonize you and say, "Oh, look at him. He came out in 4 days." I know people right now, family, colleagues, who have told the world that they contracted COVID. And we have seen them post pictures online. We have seen them in live videos. In fact, there was a gentleman on Star Talk the other day with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he revealed, and it was, when I say revealed, I don't mean it was some big dramatic thing. He just told Neil deGrasse Tyson and the other guests that he had, tested positive. The disease, AIDS, is similar in this regard. It doesn't necessarily present visibly. So, but I'm very sure. So during this, what I think that particular feed or that particular live broadcast by Neil deGrasse Tyson maybe lasted 45 minutes. I can guarantee you, and you all know that you can do the same. I've done it during political campaigns. I have not felt well. Like, this last winter, I attended so many forums, so many interviews, and I pulled it together. And for me, in my mind, because especially having been an athlete and just the scope of work that I've always done, for some people, it's easier to just pull it together because you know that you can just fall down and fall out when you get home. There's a great I can't even talk now. There's a great Hoppa C, transposing the letters here. There's a great cup of tea, hot tea, waiting for you when you get home. Maybe you've already made your hot soup and you go in and you shine, and then you go home and you put on your comfy stuff and you put your you slather on your Vicks because we used to call it Vicks Ab, right? But you slather on your Vicks Vapor Rub, and then you take care of yourself. I think that's what we're seeing here. So not so much as that, I agree with Dr. Fauci in two different ways. So I can only read my colleagues, and when I say my scientist colleagues, my peers, I can only read about how the virus presents in human health, psychologically, neurologically, respiratory, in those different systems, right? I can only read about that because I'm not in the hospitals. So I'm not making those direct observations. So that's where my information is somewhat limited, okay? Dr. Fauci has told you that he's seen it with his own two eyes. He knows it. He knows the pattern. And I find no reason to take issue with what he's saying, because it sounds legitimate based on how bacteria, the bad bacteria, can impact the human body. That I have seen with the studies that I have done. I've seen that directly. I've seen how chemicals can impact the human body. Hence, the nuclear power plant. And one particular study for which I was lead scientist was the leaching of pesticide and how it presented in the human body. So I would take urine samples. So I know those things experientially through my own lead scientist observations and, the research data, okay? But it only makes sense. It makes common sense. If we think of it in the scope that I just kind of gave you from general, how we know how we all kind of roll. It doesn't take a doctor, no expert in the field to tell you that, okay, some people may have well-pronounced symptoms and other people may not have them as pronounced. And it may not be so much as that it's not as well pronounced. They may already have a capacity or a higher threshold for pain than you do, or a higher threshold for certain symptoms, certain inflammatory responses than you do, based on some of the other ailments that they've suffered with in their life. So this show by Trump is not an indication that the virus is not real. So I need some of you who are still, you're holding on because in the beginning you were like, yeah, the virus ain't real, or it's not that big of a deal. It ain't real, or it's not that big of a deal. Oh yeah. And now you're like, see, I told you, see, look how Trump is acting. And if Trump was really sick, then they wouldn't have let him out. Guys, please understand. We all still have free will, even the president, even more so the president, okay? And it is very reckless for even Donald Trump. Have we seen his wife come out? Has she made the trip with him? The video I saw highlighted Donald Trump. That's who you could see from the truck as he tried to basically parade himself about, his facade of well-being about. The sickness, the impact of the COVID-19 is not over. It's not over. It's not over for the general public. It's not over for Donald Trump. He's not a superior human to us. We know that. We know that metaphorically or figuratively. We all should know that by now. And he is not scientifically some metahuman. None of this stuff exists. So don't allow your friends and family who are naysayers or who are Trump supporters and there are, as we're finding, there are Black Americans who are Trump supporters. Don't let any of them dissuade you from reality, okay? All right. Okay, so here's my last I'm going to slip in my 2 cents. And my 2 cents, I can definitely intelligibly separate my personal opinion from my professional, but I'm going to make my 2 cents all one. It's going to be all one, okay? Now, I am a bit upset with my fellow scientists, only in this specific regard. We know that there are viruses all the time. We are thankful that most of these viruses, they don't do transmutation, or they don't have, it's not trans species, if you will. So a lot of these viruses we will never or not ever know, thankfully, because they will be exclusive to whatever species respectively, okay? That still does not excuse the fact that we scientists, and this is not my particular science, this is not my particular science, but for those for whom it is, I do have just a little, it's like I want to have coffee with them, like, Fran. Like, but can we, you know how we run iterations, and okay, here we go. Because that may not have made any sense to some of you. Some of you got it immediately. So I don't want to lose anybody when I'm talking seemingly high level science. Okay, so in my particular mode of work, bioremediation, utilizing wetlands, I'm always looking for a way to use the wetland strength and all of its, like, it is something else. It's a powerhouse. And I want to use it to transform bad pollutants into stabilized chemical compounds. Inactive, involatile, or even to the point where we can reuse them, where we can sterilize, filter the water, and at least maybe we can't use that water for drinking water. It would be wonderful to get to that point, and I assert from my wetland research that we can. And there are other wetland scientists that concur with me. But the nature of a wetland, most people think of it as icky and lagoons and marshes, so no one really wants to protect them, right? Except those who really fish in it, or they do the swamp, the swamp boats on it. But we run iterations on the load, the concentration of the pollutant that we can put through the wetland, run through the wetland. And some of you are going to say, oh, she's not using some of these expert terms. I'm not using expert terms because I'm not speaking to an expert audience. So please don't I'm trying to make sure, because we're an hour and 12 minutes now, so I want to make sure that everybody's receiving it well. Okay, so we run it through. So you say you take nuclear waste, right? You're going to run it through the wetland, and these different iterations. If you know, you always have heard people say, I don't want to have to iterate, or do I need to iterate? I will reiterate. We know that what they're basically saying is, I will emphasize, or I will say again. Don't let me have to reiterate what I've already iterated. So I've already done it. Don't make me have to do it again, right? Okay, so reiterations at different concentrations of this pollutant that we're going to run through this wetland and see what happens. Okay, and we'll record our findings. Does the wetland remediation capacity, is it good at 100 pounds of sludge? Is it good at 200 pounds of sludge? Is it good at 300 pounds of sludge? Okay. Is it effective? Is the efficacy? You've heard Dr. Fauci say often the viral efficacy was, and he's also used it as it relates to the antibody efficacy, right? The vaccine efficacy. It's a term we definitely use in the sciences. All right. So in that scope, I would say, friends, like, is there not a way, and I know we're talking about life forms, so it's a little lopsided. You can't directly correlate what I do, the way that we research, and have the methodology for remediation of pollutants, and make that somehow correlative to the way that you find an antibody for unknown future viral strains. But I would still want to have that conversation, and I would pose it like that, and they may, lovingly, I would hope they'd lovingly laugh at me, because, again, virology specifically is not my specialization, even though I can follow all day long. I'm with them 24/7. I'm with you right there. But there are going to be some things I should necessarily not know. I should not be as well versed as they are, because they are the specialists. Now, vice versa, they should not be as well versed as me in wetland bioremediation, and they generally are not. But I would ask that question, hey, so is there not a way that we can run simulations, if you will? Not so much as on humans, but just the cellular, because they can isolate a cell and then see, because that's what they're doing. Essentially when they're doing research, geneticists, they're isolating the gene, they're taking apart, DNA. They're doing all these things at the microcellular level. So then, can we not use that kind of reverse engineering, if you will, to figure out and maybe predict the new strain, predict the behavior of the new strain, in fact, and then prepare for that new strain? So those are my particular thoughts and comments on vaccine research right now, and vaccine research specifically related to COVID-19 and coronavirus strains. I will continue on as it relates to wetlands being a possible viable answer to our vaccine issues. All right, so I hope that you have enjoyed this. I hope that you have your knowledge base has been enlarged through this process. And if you are an expert or a scientist in a related field, I hope that that I articulated in a manner that that you either concur or you comprehend to the extent of your own specific concerns about what has transpired during this time. I want you to please feel very comfortable to share them with me so that we can have a discussion about those things as well. I would also love the opportunity to bring some of you live. This is not intended, not any of my live sessions are intended, well, the majority of them, because of course some of them are just intended to kind of give you a heads up or give you some information or dispel a myth or share a statute or here's a affidavit that you need. Yeah, so those I am effectually talking at you, even though I don't ever want to just talk at you. But these live sessions I do intend to be highly interactive. So it is always my pleasure, always, you can't even imagine how much, always my pleasure to be able to share that which I've learned. I hope that you have a wonderful day. I hope that if you are in a position where you have tested positive for COVID, that you have not been reluctant to see your doctor now, especially at this juncture in the pandemic. You should feel comfortable. I know we were a little concerned, especially Black America in the beginning, and those concerns were valid. I concur that those concerns were valid. I'm always concerned, foremost as a Black patient, when choosing a physician, and then thereupon choosing when my symptoms are significant enough to see my physician, and I'm mindful to ask certain questions that are relevant to the conditions that we are predisposed to, okay? So those were valid. Please don't perceive any of your concerns during that time as not being valid. They were valid. I do think that there is more of clarity and transparency now, and I believe very strongly that you should see your trusted physician. If you do not have a trusted physician, please do not hesitate to reach out to me or maybe a trusted community leader or a trusted spiritual leader of yours to identify a physician so that you can receive proper care. It is not recommended, nor is it beneficial for you to just quarantine at home during this time. And if you have recovered, may your recovery be into perpetuity, but be mindful that there may be lingering complications, so stay on top of those. And if you weren't already on top of your health, please consult holistic experts. There are physicians who have holistic practices. If you need resources in that regard, please do not hesitate to reach out to me or reach out again to your trusted spiritual or community leaders for that information. And if you have a trusted physician who doesn't specialize in holistic care, if you trust them, then they will refer you to a holistic specialist. We will have some live feeds on holistic immune health. And I guess I'll figure out that schedule for that as well. But the next 2 live sessions will be this week. One tomorrow to explain to you what happened on this past weekend. One later this week to finish our discussion on vaccine research. And then next week we will address the topic of Black conservatives who support Trump. Okay? Again, always my pleasure. Have a wonderful day.